Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Six Steps to a Better Business, and thank you for joining us. If I could ask you to put into the chat box a little bit of information about you and your business. Let's get your name, your company name, your ideal customer, and your number one business challenge or what it is you hope to learn about today. And if you feel like putting that in privately, please do so. But if you would, please share and let's get started. I'm going to ask an important question, if you would, please. This is very important. May I be your coach for the next couple of hours? Now, we're going to sit down and we're going to throw some really different ideas around. And what I'd like you to do is share with me that I can share challenging thoughts and interesting ideas. And let's see if we can't do something that helps you with setting up and growing your business dramatically over the next few years. And thank you very much for joining us. So, my purpose as a coach today, you're spending time with me, you're investing time. So, my purpose today as your coach is to reward your time with simple, fast, and easy ways to increase sales and profits, free up your time, and to create an amazing team. So, these are the major components of an outstandingly successful business. And we're going to look at what that means here pretty shortly. So a little bit about us. I'm going to talk about Action Coach. Action Coach is a very large corporation of which I'm a franchise owner. Action Coach is the world's number one business coaching firm, and that's partly because we've been around the longest as a large firm, and we have extended ourselves into more countries and more coaching offices than anybody else so far. We're operating in about 70 countries and we have 1,000 coaching offices worldwide. It's privately owned and founded by Brad Sugars, who himself is an entrepreneur and an author. He actually had started up and run 38 businesses before starting up Action Coach. And in fact, Action Coach, the systems we use in Action Coach are largely developed from his experiences, plus the experiences of others as we've worked along. As an organization, our vision is to create world abundance through business re-education. And we currently coach over 15,000 businesses each week across the world. All these are typical countries. That means, and we share information. So we're talking amongst ourselves all the time. What that means is these systems are tested and proven pretty broadly. The goal here is to achieve as much for other people as possible. Now, a little bit about me. I grew up in Rochester, New York. I have an electrical engineering degree plus an MSBA from Bucknell, which I picked up a bunch of years later as a consequence of making a decision to switch from being a technical person to being a business person. And since then, I've spent more than 20 years running small business units for large manufacturing corporations. These are corporations that involved boilers, they involve centrifuges, they involve valve systems, and I'm speaking of large valve systems, not the little ones in your house. These are industrial scale and power plant scale, and air pollution control equipment for power plants. The last business unit I grew 300% in 3 years. Now, a lot of what allowed me to accomplish that are the kinds of systems that I'm going to talk about today. However, it had taken me nearly 20 years to figure those kinds of systems out, and I never really systemized them. And this is what brings Action Coach to the forefront. And the reason I didn't go out on my own by myself is they have pulled together some really neat systems and put it together in a very well constructed systematic process. And that enables me to share from my experience these systems that are actionable and have very concrete steps along the way that allows me to share those with business owners like yourself and have helped other businesses grow much more quickly than they would have left on their own. I mean, it took me nearly 20 years. How long do you want it to take you? I've been a business coach and a mentor and a trainer since June of 2010. That means I've done quite a bit of training for quite a few business owners along the way. Now, let's get started here. I'm going to get myself out of the picture. Let's talk a little bit about this point of power. If you think about that yellow dot as a point of power, everything emanates either above or below that. Now we can look at these behaviors: blame, excuses, and denial. How do these kinds of behaviors really help a business owner succeed? And it doesn't really, does it? So it's really an obstacle, if you will. These are the kinds of behaviors that get in the way of accomplishing things. Now, we all do it, and it's kind of a matter of sitting down and catching ourselves when we're in the middle of blaming COVID or blaming somebody for this or blaming somebody for that, or making excuses or denying the fact that we have to be the one to get innovative and do things differently. These are the things that get in our way. On the other hand, if we take ownership of the fact that the reality of today is the reality that we're in, and that we are responsible for making whatever change in our business and our lives we need to make, then we can hold ourselves accountable, or we can get somebody to hold us accountable so that we can go forward and do the things that it takes to get done and do them much more expeditiously than we would otherwise. Now, we tend to think of the behaviors below that point of power, and this is why we call it a point of power, as powerless or victim or just a basic behavior that gets in our way. On the other hand, if we think about the ownership, accountability, and responsibility behaviors, these are the behaviors of the people who get results. These are the people who take control of their situation and advance forward much more quickly. So you got to ask yourself the question, which are you doing more of, and which should you be doing more of, so that we can get movement forward? Now, what that does is that brings us to the thought that the only failure is the failure to participate. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that everything we do is really an experiment. It either produces the results that we were looking for, or it doesn't. Now, if we are in control, if we actually take ownership of our situation, then we can think through exactly what it is we're accomplishing and what can we do to make it better. And if we don't like the results we're getting at doing it the way we are, then what do we've got to do to change so that we can get the result that we're looking for? Now, one of the challenges we get ourselves into, and if you've ever had teenagers, you know what I mean. If we ever get into this behavior, well, I know this will work, maybe someday, or I know that won't work. I've never done it, but I just know it won't work. Well, if we get into those kind of behaviors, then we're getting in the way of our ability to get stuff done. It prevents us from having an opportunity to learn new things. So, if you think about how people behave, we ourselves can get into this. So we want to start thinking about, how do we stop this I know behavior and catch ourselves and change our internal speech within our head to isn't that interesting? If we can change our internal thinking to isn't that interesting, then we can open ourselves up to learning new ideas, trying new things, getting the baggage out of the way so that we can actually get stuff done that we wouldn't otherwise get done. Now, a little bit about learning. You have to think about this as a game. We've got to find a way to make the hard stuff fun. Now, fun is really a decision. If you think about it, there are people out there who think accounting is fun because it's a game. There are other people out there that think accounting is horrible. Well, accounting data is stuff that we need to know about in our businesses in order to be successful. And I'm using it as an example. It's true in many other things. We could say the same about sales. We've got to be able to make sales. We've got to know that we have the money that we're going to need to have as we go along the line. So all of these are things that we have to decide are fun so that we can actually get them done. And this is a matter of sitting down and making a commitment to learn how to make it a game so that we can learn to win the game. So focus on winning the game by learning new things and learning how to get better at the skills that you need to get better at. Now, today, I hope to share some what we call BFOs, or blinding flashes of the obvious. In many cases, these will be things that you already know, that you've already heard, but you've never learned how to apply and you've never actually applied them. So what I hope to do today is to say these things in a way that you can take advantage of them and step out and make them successful for you. All right, so let's go forward. I'm going to have some rules today. I'm going to, first of all, ask you to turn off your mobile phones, and I'm going to turn mine off right now so we don't get any interruptions. And I'm going to ask you to participate. Feel free, use the Zoom chat box. If you feel uncomfortable sharing directly, use it in a private mode. There is a private mode. Use it in a private mode, and you can share your point or your idea or your comment or your answer, or raise your hand. And if you want to raise your hand, we can get into it, but raising your hand in chat is probably the most effective way for this format. Unfortunately, I much more prefer the personal, but this is what we've got. We're going to take ownership of what we've got. So let's start by thinking about your business. Is your business driving you, like this gentleman right here, who's sitting there slaving away while he could be out doing something else? Or are you in this position where your business is driving itself and you can sit back on the beach and enjoy playing video games and having a good time? It is possible to do both or either. You can either be the driver of your business or the business driving you, or you can be enjoying yourself while the business is working for you. And it's a matter, again, of a decision. It's a commitment to a different vision. So which is your vision and how important is it for you? Now, where I want to go with this is most business owners only ever have a job. And I mean this by a dramatic number. If you think about all of the solopreneurs or very small businesses with just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 employees, in a manner of speaking, these are business owners that are still working for an hourly wage, which makes it a job. And we tend to think of them as being just over broke. And yes, they may be making more money than they ever thought that they could, but they're still operating on a basis of just over broke compared to what they could be doing if they really, really pressed forward and went after the concept of using the business to make money. Now, what we see is the number one reason for business failure is burnout. Now, what does that mean? If you really look at the statistics, the SBA has put some numbers out about businesses that make it and businesses that don't. And overwhelming numbers indicate that about 90 to 94% of businesses never make it past about 3 to 5 years. Now, they close for any number of reasons. Bankruptcy is never or rarely one of them, although many do bankrupt. Most of the time, it's that the owner got tired of trying to do everything at once. He was doing the work. He was doing the selling. He was doing the marketing. He was running around everywhere. He was buying stuff. He was installing stuff. It was just constant doing. And he's never making the money that he could have made if he'd worked for somebody else. And so a lot of businesses go through this cycle where they burn out and maybe go to work for somebody else or throw it all in and go start a different business. And then they go through the cycle again and again until they learn many of the skills that we're going to talk about today. There isn't an alternative if you really want to focus on it in a systematic way. Now, Action Coach has developed a definition of a successful business. It is another way of looking at this scenario. And that is to call it a commercial profitable enterprise that works without the owner. Now, those are steps. Each one of those words is a step along the process, or can be a step along the process if you define it in a roadmap kind of way. And what we're going to do today shortly, in fact, in the next slide, is to lay out an overall roadmap to accomplish this particular goal. So a roadmap can look like this. The first step is a mastery step. There are certain fundamentals of business that we all need to master in order to accomplish our business. We're actually going to get into definitions of each of these steps as we go along this presentation. But the first foundational step is a mastery step. Many times I'm working with businesses that are in the $2 million, $3 million, sometimes even $6 million range, and they haven't really mastered all of these things. And so they've got some serious vulnerabilities and they're stuck. And we have to go back, and now it's more complicated because they've got more stuff going on. And so we have to redefine how they're doing the mastery steps along the way. The purpose of this is to eliminate the chaos so that they actually have a concrete plan about what's going on. The second step we call niche. This is actually about building a predictable cash flow. And the overwhelming purpose here is to build a machine that brings cash in predictably month after month, year after year, so that we can be growing the cash flow in a sensible, controlled, and planned basis. And we know what we're doing. And I will show some fair amount of detail on how that can work if you choose. The third step we call leverage. This is taking what we've done and what we've accomplished in mastery and niche and then systemizing it. And this is building, we may be using technology, we may be scaling up people, but we are scaling up with systems so that we can gain efficiency and therefore profitability. Next step after that is to scale up a team. Now, most of the time, businesses already have employees, but this is a case of building the team in a scaled kind of way to match the growth in revenue that we've generated in the niche category or the niche level. And so what we're trying to do is scale this process up. The purpose of this is building a process towards growth in profits. That's the real goal of this step. We can move on from there in synergy. This is about putting a general manager in place. This is really the time where the business owner, once he's got that general manager successful and able to be in control of this process, this is the point where the owner is able to get off and do other things. And that's where he can get into investing, growing other businesses, taking on other ventures, doing other things, getting into philanthropy, whatever it is that he is interested in at that particular point in time. So this is really what it's all about. This is a roadmap of steps. There is a very structured way to go at this. We often find that we have to take tangents. We often find we have to back up in order to do some of the more foundational things in order to make it all work. But this provides us a very well contained and captured process to get something done. Now, that was a system. There are two key systems that we tag along with that. We talk about the 5 ways that's used inside of the niche component of this process. And that is where the money machine comes from. We're going to spend some time to talk about that in today's presentation. Another system that's in place are the 4 ways, and this is a collection of strategies that we use along with the money generation in order to advance our systemizing processes. Collectively, between these two systems, there are probably about 350 to 400 different strategies involved. No, we don't necessarily have to do all of them, but a lot of them do an awful lot of good for building businesses. Now, I'm going to pause for a minute, and I'm going to ask you guys to share, what have you learned so far? Yeah, job. Yeah, that's right. It is a job. A lot of people suffer from that. With that, I think we're going to move along. The first step we're going to want to talk about is mastery. We really want to think about mastery, because if we want to achieve anything, we've got to have a foundation in place to achieve it with. Now, mastery is the commercial enterprise stage of this. Now, the problem is the cost of chaos is a lot of stress. A real core part of business owner stress comes down to poor financial management. And it extends to the entire management of the entire business. It's not just financial management, although that's the one that gets people. It's the time management. It's what do I need to do, and how do I get enough done so that I can get to the financial results I want to get. So chaos is really a killer in a sense for people in business. And that gives us 4 areas to master in our business. One is, where are we going? The other is, how is our money coming in and going out? The other is, are we using our time in the best way possible? And the other is, how are we delivering the things that we deliver? Now, that doesn't just mean the delivery of the product. It also means the sales process. It also means the administrative process. So there's a whole bunch of things inside of that category of delivery mastery. We're going to talk about each one of those just a little bit. Let's start with destination mastery. What is your business goal? Is your business goal to work until you die and hang out over that computer screen or whatever it is the tools are? Is that your goal? Or do you have kind of a bigger goal than that? And what do you need to accomplish in order to achieve your real goal? So there's no use going out and building a business if you don't know where you're going to with it. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same thing day in and day out and day in and day out until you can't do it anymore. And then the question is, have you accomplished enough? Now, COVID or no COVID, the destination doesn't need to change. There are external things that are going to happen in our lives no matter what we do. And if you really think about this, we had economic struggles in 1973. We had them again in 1987. We had them again in 2001. We had them again in 2008 and 9. And we're going through COVID right now. These things just happen. So it's our job to design our business so that we can get through these kinds of things regardless of what happens to us. It's not about what happens to us, it's how we're able to respond to what happens to us. So we have to have the ability to understand our business and understand our goal, and to have the ability to adapt and change as circumstances require. That requires a certain amount of mastery of the money and understanding what's coming and going. Now, if we want to manage something, we have to learn how to measure it. And I know most people don't like accounting, and this is where it comes in. We still have to measure it. We still have to be in control of it, and we have to know where it's coming from and where it's going to, and how much of it we need in order to take the next step. How much of it we need in order to survive the next incoming out of control situation that's not ours, but we have to live with it. Things like COVID is a key example. Now there's a couple keys to money mastery. A major key is building a budget and then getting the reports and reading the reports on a frequent enough basis. And by frequent enough, some things need to be looked at daily, some things need to be looked at weekly, some things need to be looked at monthly. You need to be looking at your P&L and your balance sheet and your statement of cash flows at least monthly and understanding what they mean in your business if you hope to grow. And then matching that against the budget that you set up at the beginning of the year so that you know where you're going. A way of looking at this is, how do I get beyond break even? We need to live beyond break even if we want to have a profit. So part of this game is knowing where we are. How many units do we have to make per day, per week, per month in order to get beyond break even? This is a very core piece of this process. And then we get into utilization. How much capacity do we have? How much capacity will we need? Now, this is where it gets into understanding where the team need comes from. Is we can't do it all ourselves, so we need to bring people on to do stuff for us. Which things, how much, how big, how often? These are questions that we need to ask. These are the questions I work with clients on all the time, is how do we work through that kind of a process? We're working on that with a couple of clients right this minute. Once we've got an understanding of the money, then we've got to figure out how are we using our time? Are we using them on the right things? So this is where a case comes in of, are we actually sending out invoices? I've known business owners who are so busy doing the work, they're not sending out the invoices. Well, how the heck can you bring in cash if you're not sending out the invoices? Or they're sending out the invoices and not collecting on their debts. How do you get wealthy if you're not collecting? You have to have all of the products in-house in order to get stuff done, or be able to get the services done, have the capacity to get the services done. Do you know what your key performance indicators are? And that's what KPIs mean, is key performance indicators. What are the key performance indicators on your business? And sometimes we have to sit down and do some real serious analysis of a particular business in order to know for them what their KPIs need to be and what the results need to be looking like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, so that they know if they're on track, and if they're not on track, what adjustments we need to make so that we can get on track. This is all part of the process of building high cash flow, is we have to know which activities bring us cash flow and which activities don't. The whole goal is making sure we're working on the high productivity and high activity things that produce the results we're looking for. Now, this is, we sit down and think about this from a time target perspective. Some things that we're working on may not be urgent and may not be important, and we probably got to get rid of those kinds of activities because they're really just a distraction. Other kinds of activities are urgent, but aren't really important. A lot of these come in the form of emails, texts, and phone calls, but they don't really bring us to our goals. And so we've got to think about those. Are those really a delusion of feeling important? And that we've got to find a way to get around those, maybe say no a few times. Now we get to the things that are urgent and important. And I like to joke with people about taxes. Taxes can be urgent and important someplace around April 1. If they're urgent and important at that point in time, maybe we've got to drop everything like that important client request, because we've got a legal obligation to get something done for our taxes. And that, even if we're filing for an extension, we've still got to get a certain amount of information available and make a payment so that we can move on and get back to business. And that's a demand, and that's really still a challenge. If we had done that activity starting in February, for example, we could have done it in little bits and pieces when it was not urgent but important, And we could have gotten that done without it interfering with our ability to serve our clients. So we want to think about how we use our time in this kind of a context and categorize what are the things that are really important for me to be working on, and how do I get them done before they become urgent. If we really want to be successful, we want to get to where we're operating as much of our time inside those inner circles as opposed to in those outer circles. And so this becomes a big part of managing how we use our time and how our team members use their time. The on the business portion of this work is stuff that fits in the not urgent but important category. Now, what are the things that working on your business involve? Well, yes, sales and marketing need to be done. They are actually in the urgent and important category, but setting up the sales strategies and the marketing plans are the on the business portion, so that they can be in place so that you can follow them in order to get the selling done. Now, the next category of mastery is, are you delivering consistently? How do you describe quality, for example? And are you matching that quality time after time after time after time? Do you have checklists? Do you have flowcharts so that you can match that every single time? Now, if you're operating by yourself, you can operate with the feeling, well, I don't need flowcharts and I don't need checklists because it's all in my head. And that might be true, although I've known a lot of cases where it was said, but not completely the case. They were still making it up as they went along. But be that as it may, if you're ever going to get somebody else to do it for you, what is the checklist they're going to follow? Are they going to follow the checklist in their head? How do you know that's the checklist that's in your head? So there's going to be a process of training and teaching. And so these are the tools that start to build your ability to not have to do everything, but to be able to have somebody else do it for you. Building a checklist so somebody else can do it is a very powerful tool. And it also helps you know you don't have to reinvent it each time for yourself. And then that gets us into the category activity we call niche, which is all about building predictable cash flow. This is where we go to the profitable portion of the commercial enterprise. This is about building towards a money machine. Now, our definition of a niche is no price competition. If you are dominating a niche, nobody else is able to compete with you. If they're not able to compete with you, you are able to set any price you want because it's your price, your value. If they want to buy in your niche, then they have to buy from you because you dominate that niche. There might be other players in it, but you are in dominant position. So your goal is to build a niche that allows you to have no price competition, and you can set your prices within reason any place you want to. This is not about being the low price guy. Being the low price competitor is a race to going out of business. This is where you do not have enough money. You can't afford to have the people doing work for you because you're racing to the bottom of that profit margin perspective. Now, to create a niche, you've got to have a unique selling proposition. What is it about what you're doing that is unique? What is it about what you're doing that enough customers want to buy it that way so that you can be dominant in doing it that particular way? This requires a lot of innovative thinking. This is not the normal run-of-the-mill, just run out and do the job and get it done and do the job and get it done. This is thinking through, how can I be unique and how many customers want it that way so that I can deliver something special, a special experience that they don't have. For example, a uniqueness that I would have in my business is I'm selling more than just insight. Most business coaches are mostly selling insight. I've got 20 years of background that I can put an awful lot of insight into place. And I actually had about 15 years before that as a technical person with customers. So in a quasi sales role, I've got an awful lot of background that allows me to have some insights into where a business is going. But that's not all of what I bring. With the Action Coach Connection, I'm bringing um, concrete systems that are actionable right away so that you don't have to invent the systems. We just have to customize them for your particular case. This is a unique selling proposition. What have you got in your business that is unique that you can sell against and then make a guarantee against? So it's the guarantee that gives the unique selling proposition the power in order to help a customer solve a particular problem. And this is all it's got to be all about what problem is it that the customer wants solved. Now, let's pause for a bit before we get to the next stage. What have you learned so far, and how can you apply it to what you've learned so far into your business? Once you've established a uniqueness, then we can start to focus on leveraging it. Now, this is a very powerful process, and it's kind of a question of looking at it. This fits on any business. The same as a car can be put on a chassis, and it can be almost any car on the same chassis. This is a chassis that any business can work on. It's formulated around a concept of testing and measuring. Testing and measuring makes every single thing in an experiment, and then we test against that experiment to see if we can improve it. Now, we're going to get into how does this work in more detail. Most businesses think in terms of the number of customers they have, how much revenue they make, and how much profit that they make. The profit is what they put in their pocket when they're done. The revenue is what they sell, and the number of customers that they have at the moment. That's where most of their thinking is. The problem is those are just outcomes. They aren't really strategies. However, there are ways to break each of those components down into smaller chunks, and strategies can be built around the smaller chunks in a systematic, scientific kind of way. You just have to think beyond the just do it stage and then get into the planning and thinking stage first so that you know what it is that you're going to do. So for example, let's look at a formula and put some numbers into the formula. The formula looks like this. Number of leads times conversion rate is really what makes up the number of customers. And then the number of customers times the number of transactions per customer per year times the average dollar sale is what your revenue is made up of. And then your revenue times the profit margin is what the profit is made up of. So if we think of the blue items on this list, we can make strategies for the number of leads. We can make strategies for the conversion rate, and so on and so forth. So let's put some numbers in so that we can build in an example and see where this goes. For a particular business gets 4,000 leads in a year. They convert 25% of them. So how many customers do they have now? Well, 25% of 4,000 is 1,000 customers. Cool. Now, 1,000 customers that average 2 transactions per year at an average of $100 per transaction, how much revenue does this business have now? Well, it's 200,000. So 200,000 with a profit margin of 25% produces $50,000 of profit for the owner. Cool. What if we scientifically work at each of those blue variables as variables, just like it is in a math formula? If we have 4,000 leads, is there anything that says we can't do activities which will increase our numbers of leads by 10%? So think about how you're generating leads right this minute. And are there 3 or 4 ways that you're not generating leads now that you could use? Or could you go back to those ways that you're doing and do more of them so that you can get more leads? Is it possible over the course of a year to increase the number of leads by 10%? And of course, the answer is always yes, if you're willing to do the stuff that you're not doing now. And now we get 4,400 leads. Now, if you've got a conversion rate of 25%, think about the conversion rate you actually have. How good is that conversion rate? And especially, how good is it for the ones that are not referrals? But how good is that conversion rate? Can you learn to sell more effectively? Is it possible to increase that conversion rate by 10%? I don't mean by 25 to 35. I mean 25 to 27.5. Is it possible, if you kept track and measured your conversion rate and learned a little bit more skill, that you could get to 27.5? And of course, the answer is yes. Well, if you can do that, what's your new number of customers? Well, 27.5% of 4,400 is 1,210. So now we've got an increased number of customers. Well, we're working with these customers twice a year. If we did some stuff to invite more customers to come back more often, maybe we educated them on other things that we can do for them that they haven't been buying from us, could we increase that number by 10%? And by this, I mean just taking it up to an average of 2.2 times per year. And that just means we have to get a small number of that 1,200 customers to buy from us more than once. Okay, now, what are the things you could do in your business that increases the average dollar sale by 10%? Is it possible that you've got add-ons that you could be selling, additional services or products of some sort that would allow you to get to 110? Golly, if you've got a unique selling proposition, could you just increase your price? These are different ways to increase the average dollar sale. If we do all that, how much revenue does this business have now? Well, 1,210 times 2.2 times 110 comes out to $292,820. That's an increase of 46% just by doing 4 things differently. All right, is that a valuable change to you? And this would scale. It doesn't matter what size your business is. This is scalable directly. Now, profit margin. Is it possible we could find ways to be more efficient about how we're doing what we're doing? Remember, we already talked about a time target and a delivery mastery process. If we were able to use those tools to increase our efficiency, could we increase it by 10% to 27.5? Most of the time, that is true. Therefore, our profit goes up to $80,525. That's a 61% increase in profit. Is that valuable to you as a business owner? So you want to be thinking about these things in a systematic kind of way. So now we could do this year over year over year if we think about our business in a scientific kind of way rather than an ad hoc day by day, moment by moment kind of way. We can do some magic things with our business. Now, I'll take this for example. What if we did this for several years? What if we did it for enough years that we were able to increase those same 5 variables by 100% over the time frame? So that's not next year. That's not even the year after. It might be 6 or 7 or 8 years. But suppose we did this for several years. If we increase the number of leads by 100%, what would we get? Well, 4,000 leads increased 100% is 8,000 leads. What if we increased our conversion rate from 25%, we increased it 100%. Now we're at 50%. How many customers do we have now? Well, 1,000 to 2,000, right? Wrong. 1,000 to 4,000. 50% of 8,000 is 4,000. So we've just increased 400%. Now, number of transactions. If we did a good job of working through helping customers buy from us more frequently, could we increase that by 100% to 4? Similarly, could we find more things to upsell? Could we increase the average dollar sale from $100 to $200? What's our new revenue? Well, now it's 4,000 times 4 times 200, which is 3.2 million. It's kind of a dramatic opportunity if we only start to focus on our marketing and selling processes as a machine instead of thinking of it on an ad hoc, take it as it comes kind of basis. So let's look at our profit margin. Could we increase our efficiency by 50%? And what would that bring us for profit? 1.6 million. So here is in a completely different way to think about our business than what most people think about. Most people have a job. This is looking at a business in a way that's completely different from a job. This is looking at a business in a systematic, scientific kind of way to generate cash. Now, is that the same business? A $3.2 million business and a $200,000 business is not the same business. A $200,000 business is 1 to 2 people, usually. A $3.2 million business might have 10 to 12 to 13 people in it. So there's a lot of things the owner had to change along the way in order to make this happen. So it isn't just marketing and selling. It isn't just customer service. It's those things plus. So this is where getting out of the job think and getting into the business think model is a lot different and produces a much more pleasant kind of outcome. Now, at this stage, the business owner might still be working very hard. Well, he's still got some distance to go and he's got some opportunities to go for. And we're going to look shortly at how those work. So this is where the efficiency process comes in. Leverage is where we get the business working. Yes, you're working, but the business will be working. That means you will have work going on around you. And if we've done our mastery, delivery mastery, and our time mastery, and our money mastery well, it's much easier to make this leap into leverage and systemizing things than it is if we haven't. And I can tell you, I'm working with several customers on this exact challenge right now as we're going back and having to re-examine how we make certain decisions in the delivery process and certain decisions in the sales process, and how we even conduct the sales process so that the decisions are made cleanly and completely before we get too deeply into the production process. So this is all about building systems, and we tend to think of systems as saving yourself time, energy, and money. So kind of a fun acronym there. Now, the key to this is that there are 9 key steps to systemize a business. That's a book that we provide our customers in order to help get this into place and make this work, let's start at the top. It starts with a vision statement. You got to know where you want to go with this business. This is not your personal vision statement. This is your business vision statement. And then what are the key methods that you're going to use to accomplish that vision? What's the culture you want to have? How do you want people working together within your business? If you're working alone, it's easy to make these statements, but then if you're going to work alone, you're not going to make those kind of results. So if you want to make those kind of results, you've got to have some clarity about where you want to go with this business. Once you've got those in place, then some SMART goals go a long way to giving everybody knowing where they have to go, what they have to do, and how much of it that they have to do. An organizational chart so that you know what the key functions are going to be in that business. You may currently have a small number of people doing many jobs, but in the long term, you still have to understand what the functions are so that, and who's going to do which ones and who you're going to hold responsible for each one along the way. That builds some positional contracts so that you're having a concrete written decision as to a person who fits in that function is going to have to do it this way and accomplish these things. And that brings up the KPIs. So what are the measurements that that function needs to complete at various revenue levels so that we can grow into it? Only then can we really define what the how-to systems are going to be, as we need all of that context so that we make sure that the how-to is accomplished correctly. And then you need a management system to stay on top of it to make sure that the KPIs are being met. Now, even if it's a one-person business, it's still a good idea to start into this process so that you've got clarity, so that you know who it is that you're going to hire next, how they're going to help you, which functions that they're going to perform, and if they perform those functions without you side by side with them, what are the KPIs they need to be meeting, and what are the methods they need to be following in order to do that position well. Otherwise, you're going to be basically doing it for them, and I don't think that was the goal of what your intent was when you went about the process of hiring. I think your intent was to make them somewhat autonomous. If you want autonomy, then you need KPIs and a management system so that you know those KPIs are being met. All right, let's take a quick break. What have you learned so far, and how can you apply what you've learned in your business? Moving on. Once we've gotten a systemizing process pretty well along, it's time to build and scale up a team. Now, a team includes a leadership team. So we have a bunch of people performing functions, but we as an owner can't step out if we are the ones that's running each of the key functions. So for example, every business has marketing. Every business has sales. Every business has production to deliver the services or the products. And every business has administration of some sort or another. That would include accounting and invoicing and collections. In order to make those work, the owner or the operating officer can save money by doing all of the leadership portions of that themselves. But if they do that, they limit their ability to grow their business. And so in the long term, they're going to want to put somebody in charge of the marketing team. They're going to want to put somebody in charge of the sales team. They're going to want to put somebody in charge of the production team. And they're going to want to especially put somebody in charge of the administration team. Then they can be focused on increasing the goals and increasing the capacities in order to make those grow and scale up, and then they can focus on the scaling up activities. So this is what we're getting into in the process of building a team. Now, this is where it works without the owner. So in order to get this to where it works without the owner, all of this has to be going. A little bit of a editorial comment by a gentleman named Tom Peters. His comment in the book Good to Great, which is a good book to read: most employees are motivated, energetic, committed, enthusiastic, and loyal, except for the 8 hours a day they work for you. And that's the problem. This is really the highlight of the concern most small business owners have, is how to build a team that's loyal to them. And actually, it isn't about them. It's about the vision to the business. And so you want to be focused on hiring people that are enthusiastic about the business vision and are going to do everything, they're committed to do everything possible, no matter what, in order to make that vision succeed. This isn't about you. This is about the vision that you set up earlier. So here is a graphic to allow you to think about what this all leads to. So I want to think about the cycle of business. There's actually 2 cycles of business. There's a macro cycle, which involves the seasons of a business, and there's the micro cycle, which is this one, and that's inside the business. And we're going to focus on the one inside the business. So inside the business, ordinarily, a business starts with an owner who serves customers. He does all the selling, he does all the serving, he does all the customer service, he does everything, and he begins to build a relationship with individual customers, and he builds a comfort zone around being the one who serves the customers. Now, the problem then is that when he gets to a certain level of busy, he can no longer keep up. So he hires a person or 2 or 3 in order to help him. And he expects those 2 or 3 people to think and value customers just like he does. Now, the problem is they're not him or her. They are them. And they have their own thoughts and their own baggage and their own ways of doing things. They might have learned them from, you hire a person who has some experience from somebody else. Well, what they're doing is they're bringing in the baggage that somebody else taught them. So they're coming in with a whole set of expectations different from yours. So they start serving customers or doing the background things to serve customers. And now the owner is not only serving customers, but the owner's putting out fires because the customers are getting service different from what it was that they were expecting. So now we have a conflict. We have an owner that's trying to serve customers and an owner that's trying to fix what the team did. And he gets excited, he gets busy, he gets frustrated, he gets burned out, and he quits. Or the owner learns quickly that if he wants to have a team serving customers, that he has got to spend an awful lot of his time and energy and effort training that team so that the team can serve the customers just like he did. And he sets the standards and the team lives to the standards, and the owner has to manage the standards, manage the processes, manages the systems so that the customers can do the work to the same set of standards that the owner would have, so that the customers see it as a seamless, relatively seamless transition. All that really changes is the name, the phone number, and the email address. If we can get that accomplished, then enough of the team can serve enough customers that the customers will take care of the business and the business will take care of the owner. So the real core here is aligning the team and hiring people that are aligned to the visions and the goals of the owner, and then establishing good standards and holding the team to those standards. This is where the KPIs come in. This is where the KPIs are really important. So this is where all of it is at. Now, to do that, there are 6 keys to a winning team. We're going to start with strong leadership. Strong leadership is not the issue of dictatorial versus democratic. Strong leadership is about a strong, clear, crystal clear vision, and all decisions are made in accordance with the vision, the mission, and the culture statements. We did those back in the systemizing process. This is where strong leadership is making certain that we live to those standards completely. No exceptions. Then a common goal. Now, common. The root word to common really is all about we make the goal together. So the owner sets the stage with the vision. The team, together with the owner, creates the goals to accomplish the vision. So how are we going to accomplish the vision? Well, we're going to do this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece now. We'll do other pieces later. Good. Then we work on those common goals together. Rules of the game. How are we going to play together? How are we going to work together? These are where we start getting into the details. What's the, we talked about organization chart and flow charts. These are places where rules of the game start to come out. In this particular case, it's culture. How are we going to work together? How are we going to treat each other? Then an action plan. This is where the details come out, the flow charts, the organization charts, which functions do which tasks, who fulfills those functions, who's responsible for those functions. At a certain point in time, the owner needs to step back and allow the team to learn and try stuff. Now, this is where the risk taking starts to happen. The owner needs to allow risks to occur. He has to manage those risks. He's got to stay on top and cannot abdicate them. Delegation and abdication are not the same thing. Delegation requires a management process. Abdication is a you take what you get kind of process. And the problem is abdication is about being lazy. Delegation is about management. And so we need to learn management skills so that we can stay on top of the activities. At a certain point in time, as the team grows in their capabilities, we want 100% of their commitment and involvement. We want all of their energy devoted towards the accomplishment of the goals and the visions. To earn that right, we have to include them 100% in the decision making. This gets us back to the common goals. We have to include them 100% in the decisions so that they own emotionally the things we're trying to accomplish, the visions and the goals that we're trying to accomplish. Part of this is the owner knowing what a winning team looks like. And his goal is to get the right people on the right bus, in the right seat, going to the right destination. This is knowing how to hire the right people and train the right people in the right ways to accomplish the purpose for which they were hired, which ultimately is to increase profitability by increasing capacity and their ability to do things more efficiently. This is a real core piece. This is all about hiring for attitude more than for skill. The attitude is what matters, because if they've got the right attitude, they will learn the right skills. Now, then that takes us to the synergy and results section of this. And synergy is all about growth. This is really where the scaling up is. This is where you go about and you put a general manager in place. And the general manager is really the opportunity for you to be able to step away. Now, a lot of people put general managers in place prematurely. They've taken shortcuts. They have skipped over many of those steps, and they wind up never completely releasing the general manager because they can't. The general manager is not ready yet because the general manager doesn't have a handle on all of the things that the owner was doing in their head. This is about getting it on paper, or on disc or something in videos, whatever, setting it up so that your general manager has the tools to actually manage this business so that it grows at the same kind of level it was growing when the owner was in control. This allows the owner to step aside, receive dividends from the business, and enjoy life and moving on to bigger goals. So, again, let's pause. What have you learned so far? Quoting Richard Branson. Everybody heard of Richard Branson? Know who he is? He has run an awful lot of businesses to great success. And his comment is, if you can learn to run one business successfully, there is no reason you can't run any number of businesses at the same time. The principles are still the same. This only works if you've got a general manager running the day-to-day activities and your key function is to set goals and manage progress to goals. And that's a case, now you can get it down to where you're only spending a few hours a week per business. At that point in time, there's any number of businesses you can run. As an example, I'll share with you that Bradley Sugars, who is the one who owns the Action Coach franchise, currently has 9 businesses. So he is running 9 businesses through other people. He doesn't sit there in each business except the Action Coach business, which he does because it's fun. But the other businesses, he sits with general managers and partners, and they do the work. And he focuses on the goals. And they've done quite a bit of pivoting in those businesses over the last few months. With that said, I can make a guarantee right now. 12 months from today, you will arrive somewhere. The question is where? Do you want to be the one who's still slaving, or do you want to be making progress towards an outcome that has you enjoying life better, making the money you want to be making? And with that in mind, there's a couple of directions you can go. You can work on continuing to try to improve your business on your own, and that's good. That's a fine thing to do. Or we can sit down and talk about how to get massive results in your business. Now, real quick, I'm going to go over some options. Generally, when I'm working with clients, we're working in one of these kinds of ways, one or several of these kinds of ways. Mentoring, which can be weekly or bi-weekly. Group coaching in groups of 4 or 2. Action Club, which is kind of an educational program. Block of hours, which we'll work on just one project for a certain number of hours. Or something I call Growth Club, which is a quarterly planning exercise. We do that once a quarter. We'll have one coming up in December, although off the top of my head, I can't remember what date. So these are all different kinds of ways. There's different pricing for each one of those so that I can accommodate as many different sized businesses as possible. And if you're ready to create massive results in your business, I'm going to offer one free 1-hour coaching session where we talk about your business in the context of this general information. My goal is that you'll walk away with 3 or 4 actionable ideas or strategies that you could implement right away. No obligation. There is no necessarily a need to sign up for anything. If we do decide to work together, it'll probably be on one of those different options that I just showed you. If you're not ready to sit down and talk, you could go to check out my YouTube channel. I've got bunches of videos in my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Action Coach Western Fairfax. It's not my name, it's this name. And so you're welcome to jump in there and see what you can learn that's helpful. I'm going to quote Bradley Sugars. You know you've made a good decision when it brings up either fear or excitement. And with that, I'm going to ask, what are your questions that I can hopefully provide a few answers for? So in the chat box, what are your questions? Moving on, just a little bit more left here. If you got some value from this webinar, I'm going to ask you a favor, and that's to post a 5-star review on whatever your preference is, Google reviews, LinkedIn, Facebook, any of those. And the point is to help others who may decide to join free webinars like this in the future to have confidence that it's worth their time. So if you would do that for me, that'd be fantastic. Quoting Jim Rohn, never wish your life were easier, wish you were better. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And this is about, you need to learn more to earn more. So that's what this game is all about. So with that in mind, it's time, get out, get into action. That's it, guys. That's what I had for today. I hope you got value from it. I hope you had a little bit of fun. And if you would, please do post your reviews. I would greatly appreciate it. It helps people make good decisions. Thanks very much, and have a great afternoon.